Hi, Cam Bernard from Latitude Geographics. I'm a product manager here. Something that comes up with our customers quite often is how do I take a Geocortex viewer and actually embed it inside a web page? So we want to take a minute and we want to show you how that's done.
Alright, so you want to embed your Geocortex web application inside a web page. I've created a web page. You can see it here on the screen. It's a check before you dig web page. It's got some images and some text, and it has a big area that I have delineated for where I want to put that app. Now, here is my HTML, and you can see down here I've got a particular article with a section in it that's all ready for me to embed my Geocortex viewer. Now, I've hosted this locally. Sometimes if you're doing your own experimentation on a Windows machine, you can go into inetpub www.root. You can drop this whole folder in. I've got an index.html file that we're looking at, some images and some styles. It's a great way to kind of get started with this. So let's do the happy path. The way we do this is we use something called an iframe. An iframe is one of your HTML5 objects that is supported. It was far more common in the HTML4 era. There were a whole bunch of additional parameters around iframes, but iframes still play an important role even in HTML5 for putting a web page inside another web page. So the syntax, you can see iframe. I've got a class name so I can do styling, but the source URL that's pointing to my viewer, don't want a frame border, don't want it to scroll, and I just want it to maximize the space that I've placed it in. So if I save that and we go back to that same web page and we reload it, it will in fact load my Geocortex viewer embedded inside this web page. So here's my viewer. We can zoom in, we can interact with it the way we normally would. Now, a few caveats, because things can definitely go wrong in this process. Obviously, people are always going to try and exploit things, and so over the years of the internet, people have found all kinds of exploitations and hacks, and so things have been put in place to prevent malicious people from doing bad things, and those things sometimes prevent good, honest folks like yourself from accomplishing their very simple goals, like embedding a viewer into a web page. So what are some things you could run into? Well, one thing you could run into is, you can see this is not secured. This is HTTP, not HTTPS. And if you try and mix together HTTP and HTTPS, you will sometimes get error or warning messages in your console log. You get to your developer console log in Chrome by using the F12 key. It looks like this. Sometimes it will fail to load and you'll have to go to that view to see what's going on, and sometimes you'll simply get something called mixed content warnings or mixed content errors. If you need more information, you can go to our support center, search for the term mixed content, and you'll see lots of people have questions about this, and there are lots of answers and suggestions on how to resolve those things. So that's one resource you'll want to check out. The second thing that can happen when you try and embed is you can sometimes get what are called cross-domain problems or CORS problems. This occurs because I've got a web page hosted locally, I've got this web viewer hosted in a completely different place, and the internet is designed to look upon that with a certain degree of suspicion because it can be used maliciously. And so what has to happen in order for all this to work is either you host your web page on your Essentials server in the same place, or you may actually get into a place where you have to set up an HTML5 proxy in order to enable this. Now, what would happen is something like this. So this was our happy example. Let me show you a little bit of a sad example where it doesn't work. I'm going to try and embed Google search engine in an iframe inside that same web page. So let's go ahead and do that. Put that in there, save it, reload it. I don't see anything. If I look at my developer tools, I actually see an error, refuse to display this. Now, in Google's case, they've simply said, no, you can't put this in a frame. So they've actually prevented it on their side. But you may see something here about mixed content errors or cross-origin errors when you try and do this. Now, if you do need to set up an HTML5 proxy, again, on our support center, HTML5 proxy. You'll see people have questions about it, but there's some very good knowledge-based articles about how to use a proxy page with the HTML5 viewer to enable this. So technologically speaking, the iframe is pretty straightforward, and getting it up and running is pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's easy to start simple. Often what I'll do is I'll actually take the page that I'm hosting and embed it again inside the page. A little matrix-like, I know, but it solves one problem, which is to make sure that everything is actually working properly. So when I do that and I reload this page, I'm basically just loading my page inside my page. But at least then I know my iframe is working the way it should, and then I can resolve any remaining HTTP, HTTPS mixed content problems or any cross-domain problems in order to get everything running. So that's a quick primer. One last note, the iframe spec was far more robust back in the HTML4 days. There were a whole bunch of additional properties around that iframe to kind of format it and size it. None of those apply in HTML5. In HTML5, you actually have to use proper HTML formatting and CSS in order to do that. Good luck. I'll see you on the forums if you've got any questions.